Let's get started, crew. Look at all the people that we got in here. All right, so we're going to talk about proven cold outreach tactics that are going to help you land more meetings today. So we actually sat down, we did prepare for this. We sat down and prepared 10 hot takes for you. So before we get into those hot takes, I want to introduce the crew to you. If you've watched any of the Sell Better webinars or Outbound Squad webinars, you've probably seen a lot of these folks, but let's reintroduce you. We have Will Aiken, founder at VidDo.
You said it right, yeah.
Yep, love the name. We have Leslie Douglas.
So close.
Dugout.
Douglas.
Just Leslie.
VP of Partnerships at Sell Better. We have James Buckley, host, content creator at Sell Better, among many other things. We have my guy, Jed Mowerly here, founder at Practical Prospecting. And if you're seeing me for the first time, my name is Jason Bay. I run a company called Outbound Squad. We do sales training and all of that fun stuff. So we first want to thank our sponsors and partners that made everything that we're doing today possible. So JB, I want to hand it off to you real quick. Who do we want to thank?
You know, I've probably said on our show countless times to everybody that comes to the show that we work with the best tech in the game. So first of all, I want to give a big thanks to ZoomInfo, probably our longest running partner. They are meeting the challenge right now. Go-to-market intelligence, really starting to change the way we view revenue operations and how we bring in new logos, how we process sales, the systems behind it, and so on and so forth. They have a great virtual show that's coming up. Huge event. You want to take a look at it. Go-to-market GTM 2025. That's the name of it. So get familiar with where that's coming from and know a lot about ZoomInfo moving into the future because it's a game changer. Orem, putting the human back in sales. Calls are still the fastest way to new conversations. So Orem gets this great platform in front of you where you can make massive amounts of dials and only talk to actual human beings and leave voicemails automatically and track all the progress you're making and. So check out Orem. And I don't think anybody here is not familiar with Vidyard. I think I've been a Vidyard user since 2014. And that Chrome extension
2014
changed the game for me.
Holy
because
shit.
I was able to prospect easily.
Yeah.
This is the easiest platform to adopt, free Chrome extension. Go check it out. Shout out to our friends at Vidyard. And those folks are responsible for what you're seeing today. So big thank you to all of those companies out there.
Jed, were you alive yet in 2014 when he was saying? So let's dig in. So the way that I want to set this up is really talk about the state of sales, state of buying, outbound, why it's so hard. I think one of the things that we have to acknowledge is that the buying environment post-COVID has changed dramatically. And let us know in the chat, actually, if for you account executives, especially if any of this relates, over half of buyers experience buyer's regret, according to Gartner. So what does that mean for us? That means that the software that we sell, a year later after that annual agreement's up, the executive team is like, we're not going to renew that. Like this didn't actually do the thing that was promised. So what that's led to is longer sales cycles, 40% longer since 2020, more stakeholders, so more people involved in deals. In the chat, let us know actually if you're working deals right now, how many stakeholders are a part of those deals? Is it 8, 10, 12? Let us know in the chat. Smaller deals also. So the average deal size has gone down by 22%. So it's taking longer to close deals. People want to get started smaller, et cetera. And what that's led to with outbound is a reluctance to take meetings, right? 1% reply rate to cold emails, 4.6% success rate from outbound calls. This one, it just breaks my heart. 56% show rate to meetings set from outbound. So nearly half of people are not even showing up to the meetings. So what I want to discuss with the crew first is if I'm a rep right now, I might be like really confused on how to fix this problem because all of us grew up in an age where when sales engagement first became a thing, you could batch and blast a sequence or a cadence and just get really good results based on sheer volume. The fact that you could connect phone calls, emails, and social touches together, that was like enough to get someone's attention. So we were just talking about this, Jed.
Yeah.
I'm curious on your take here. Like, why are things so confusing in terms of like what the answer is right now for those doing cold outreach?
Yeah, I think one of the big things, in addition to what you talked about, first off, since COVID, there's been billions and billions of more emails being sent out. So there's way more volume. In addition to that, there are so many new like AI and SaaS tools coming out for all the different problems that our buyers have. And so when you think from a buyer perspective and they search like, hey, solutions for this problem, there's dozens of more solutions. It's getting complicated. A lot of these different SaaS solutions are like bleeding into each other in the sense that they're building new features that compete with others. And so there's just more competition. Both with your actual competitors and then also in the inbox, on the phones, on LinkedIn, and all the traditional channels. So I think that's another big one that makes it harder to do outbound now.
Yeah. Go ahead, James.
I just want to tack on to that. It seems like there's a lot of companies being born that should be features in existing products.
Yeah.
And I don't think buyers always know that that's an option. That's something that difference is extremely important to them. That's my only cake topper on Jed's point there.
One other thing I want to bring up that I'm curious your two perspectives on is if you let us know in the chat, do you consume sales advice on LinkedIn? Let us know. Give us a yes in the chat if you consume sales advice. If you consume sales advice on LinkedIn right now, cold calling is dead. No, cold calling is more alive than ever. Cold email is dead. No, the sequence doesn't go through. It's going to hit spam. No, you need to do this. No, LinkedIn, social selling. You need to build there's like so much conflicting advice. So let's kick this question your way. Like, how do I know as a rep that like what we're even about to share today is something that like works and that you should listen to?
I think everything has to be put through the lens of like our own authentic voice. And we're all different humans. We all have different ways that we approach sales in general, let alone day-to-day activities, and finding something that works for you. I'd say my top two things are I'm going to try a lot of things out there. Some things I'll take in and I'll be like, that's not going to work in my industry or my field. But a lot of things I'll just try. You have to give it more than 2 times. If you're trying something, you can't just be like, I sent a video once and they didn't watch it, so it doesn't work for me. But also just like through the lens, like advice that you get from anyone, like you put it through the lens of, does this work for me, my industry? And then just try it. Yeah. And maybe not. If you don't feel drawn to it, you're not going to have fun. If you're not having fun, then it's not fun. That's just fun, a lot of fun.
I think one thing to double click on that you said there is, where do you have passion and energy? Because I think the part that people don't really talk about much is like cold calling is a really good example. Like 80% of that is how well you deliver it. It's more than what you say. It's more than like, did the person respond to this fancy permission-based opener? It's like, what is your presence? And like, do you believe in what you're doing? So I think that's really good advice where it's like, do you believe that this will work for you? And where do you have like passion and energy around something? Will, what are your thoughts if you're a rep and you're listening to this show, looking at content on LinkedIn? How do I know if something is like worth trying or not, and if it will work for me?
I think it's a good thing that there is so much advice out there, by the way, because it's like a buffet, lots of different options, but that's because everyone's got different tastes. So you need to look at it through the lens of this person who I respect said this, but that doesn't mean it's gospel truth. That doesn't mean it's going to work for me. One of the things that really helped me develop as a seller was looking at some of that advice and not discounting stuff I didn't agree with, but just knowing it wasn't for me, right? Yeah. You develop your own style, you develop your own personality, and that's when sales gets really fun. Yeah. When you have, you know what works for you. So look for that advice, sure, but also know what you believe in, your core beliefs, and how you operate best as a seller, and then take what you like and leave what you don't. Doesn't mean stuff that you don't like, it doesn't work for anyone. I always like to say there's more than one way to be great at sales, and the best way for you is the way that works for you. So
totally.
Take what you like.
I love that. And the way that I've always phrased that on the show for our audience is pragmatism is the religion of sales. The thing that works for you, that's the thing you should keep doing. Yeah. No leader will ever come to you and be like, hey, you know that thing that you started doing that's yielding the best results we've ever seen? I'm going to need you to stop doing that. Okay. It's not winning. It's never going to happen for you.
I caught that garbage. So the only thing that I would add is, so we're about to get into the 10 tips here. I like really thinking about things through a why, what, and how framework. So permission-based openers, for example, if for those of you that are unfamiliar with a permission-based opener, it's this idea that in a cold call, so I'm giving you the why here. It's the idea that no one picks up a cold call on purpose. How about we get an opt-in and see if they want to participate and give them some autonomy? And in doing that, a lot of people will say, yes, I want to participate. So if I know the why behind a permission-based opener, hey, Will, it's Jason. I know I probably caught you in the middle of something. Do you got a minute for me to chat? You can decide if you want to keep talking. Some variation of that. If I only focus on the what and the how of that, I'm not making it my own by understanding the why behind it, the psychology behind something and how it works. So with everything that we share with you today, what I would really push you to do is think about like, and we're going to do our best to explain the why behind it, but what is the why behind this so that I can make it my own? Because there's no cookie cutter magic word or phrase that we're going to give you today that's going to magically book meetings. So without further ado, you guys want to give the people what they want?
Let's do
Locked
it.
in.
Yeah.
Cool. I was going to comment when I was introducing it. We forgot to bring the facial hair today, apparently. I don't know what's...
I know.
What's going on?
I've been working on mine for quite some time.
Yeah.
So I'll get better. I'm sorry.
So Leslie, so what we're going to talk about today is the 10 ways that the best teams are booking meetings right now. So we have 10 hot takes. The first hot take, I really enjoy this one. Google is the worst search engine for research. Tell us more about this one.
Yeah, that's me. Google is the worst search engine for research. It's true. It's fact. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. I think the reason I say that is because Google is so limited and it's looking at keywords and it's pulling up just limited information. If I go to any sort of AI or intelligence platform and I put in a prompt where I'm asking it, I've trained my ChatGPT to know what company I work for, what offerings I have, what I'm selling, value propositions. And if you take a little bit of time in advance, it doesn't take long, then I can ask it specific questions. So I can go say, hey, feed me every podcast, blog, webinar that Jason Bay is featured in. Give me back quotes and value statements why he would want to buy my value or my product or solution that I'm offering, and it can then feed me back that information and with much more really specific cross points. So I don't have to continue to do more research into that video, that link.
It will help you connect the dots.
That's
right?
the one.
And team, if we could share, there's a link that we're going to drop into the chat. At Outbound Squad, we call it Reason to Meet. RTM. So finding the reason to meet, there's a ChatGPT prompt and worksheet that we're going to throw in there where you could literally just put the account name in and drop in information about what you sell and who you sell to, and it'll do all of the account research for you, including like actually assembling 80% of an email too. So what are your guys' thoughts? So just kind of open up to the group this idea that Google isn't the best place to go to reach, search a prospect, that really I should be thinking about how to leverage AI.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this too. I'm on my hot take, but I completely agree because I think half of the problem is finding the research. So like I think most people listening to this, they know what they're looking for. You're looking for a podcast with the CEO. You're looking for 10K reports, whatever that is. You know what you're looking for. But the second part is how do you connect the dots between that and what you're selling and your value proposition? And so that's the part that ChatGPT or whatever AI solution you're using is really good at, is then connecting the dots between that research and your value proposition. Because that takes a lot of effort sometimes. Sometimes it's hard to just take a podcast quote and then know how to actually, segue that into a good email. So I think that's another big part that, again, Google's obviously not going to do for you.
Yep.
The thing that stands out to me is how do I use what's out there, the AI that's out there, to remove the work and the time that I have to put into my reason for reaching out, my reason for meeting. That for me is the part that stands out. And I'm pretty sure that there are a multitude of products out there right now that will literally serve up on a silver platter all of the triggers and signals that you are looking for to have a reason to reach out. And that removes the guesswork. It removes the search time. It removes the Google, if you will, right? That's how us old folks, we refer to it as the Google.
The internet.
That's the way
I wouldn't know anything about that.
But that part of it, the AI part of it, that serves it up on the silver platter. If we don't start leveraging those things, and you can leverage ZoomInfo for this right now, that's the stuff that's going to keep our pipeline moving forward instead of having it get stagnant. And that's what happens to sellers now. It gets stagnant.
Yep. And the reality of this, check out the link that we dropped into the chat. You can literally take account research that is 2 to 3 hour task, and you can get it down to 5 minutes. Yep. So go check that out. Second hot take, Jed. Yep. Reps are paid way too much and too smart to be data miners and list builders. So tell me more about this one.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, I think reps are paid far too much and are usually too smart to be spending their time on building lists, finding emails, doing research, etc. And so the reason why I say this is over the last, I want to say 3 to 5 years, and especially over the last couple of years, so much more data is available to us now about the accounts we want to find. ZoomInfo is a great example. ZoomInfo Copilot that came out last year. Like, you can find so much information in just the click of a button. And I can share some examples on that, but that's the hot take is you need to have a RevOps person, a data miner, 1 or 2 people on the team that's responsible for researching accounts, finding the contacts, and serving those up to the reps so that they have those extra hours in their day to actually sell.
And this is one that I think if you're listening to this and you're a sales leader, this is something you need to advocate for on your team. We're working with a client right now that sells like podcast, software. And one of the things that they spoon feed to the reps is like, what's the name of that prospect's podcast? Do they have a YouTube channel? Like, what's the follow? Like, these are things that I shouldn't have to look for as a rep.
Yeah, I'll give 2 things. Curious to hear if y'all have thoughts on this as well. So a couple ways. If you are like a manager or have some authority to like make those decisions, one thing I would recommend doing is asking your AEs, your SDRs, hey, just brainstorm on a Google Doc all the things that you care about when researching accounts and contacts. What are all the things you look for? Jason's example, like podcast name, YouTube links, whatever. Put all of that down and then work backwards and find the AI solutions, because I guarantee they're out there. Find the solutions that will find that information for you automatically. That's one of the big ones, but curious if you all have other thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, just to tack onto that, that's sometimes easy when you've already sold a lot of stuff. You can look in your CRM for the things that show that someone's more likely to show interest in your product or service. But you can also use ChatGPT or AI to come up with those ideas in the first place. So I like to say, hey, this is what I sell. This is who I sell it to. These are the problems we solve. And then I will literally say, give me 100 signs, public available signs that I can see online that a company would be experiencing these problems or challenges or would be more in need of a product like mine. Now, all 100 of those are not going to be good, but it's going to prompt you to look for things that no one else is using when they're building their lists, which means that you're going to cut through that noise that we just spoke about earlier. So use it for ideas when you don't have any as well.
I think we're on 2 out of 10, right? Let's chug through. What's hot take number 3?
So I do want to add, one more thing to this though, because if you're using a ChatGPT or Perplexity, you could just upload a spreadsheet and say, here are my accounts. Can you find these 3 to 5 things and drop it back into a table for me?
A list of 100 people on LinkedIn Sales Navigator ChatGPT will give you the common thread for all of them, and you can scale that outreach that you're working on and really please your leadership who wants you to do things at scale.
100%.
I think when you say 100, you have to do them. Yes.
100.
1 million.
James, hot take. Personas created by marketing and product are pretty much useless for sales.
Thank you for the giggles.
Thanks to our marketers out there.
I love you guys.
This is hot take.
My marketers that I just stabbed in the back right now. I think that marketing created personas are not always on point with the people that sellers are selling to. And that in itself is an issue. And the reason it's an issue is because if you think about it, marketing messaging and marketing, the way they come and they teach salespeople who you sell to, you are writing to attract your buyer. But sellers don't write to attract. Sellers write to show value. Sellers write to create or uncover interest. Sellers write to find if it's a priority, what they're reaching out about, but we don't write to attract. That's what marketing is good at. So I think there needs to be a more healthy conversation between marketing and sales about who is actually being sold to. Because oftentimes everybody's put a 1 in the chat if your marketing team has ever told you we sell to these people, and the people you talk to every single day are not the person that your marketing team actually tells you that you sell to. And I should see a lot of 1s coming into the chat right now, because that is such a common problem. And if we don't start talking about it as 2 departments, it's going to consistently be a nightmare. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
So team, can we also drop a link into the chat? There's a LinkedIn post that I wrote with a ChatGPT prompt that you can use to create persona-based messaging. And I do think just because some people are disagreeing in the chat, that means these are good takes. If people disagree,
they wouldn't be hot if everyone agreed with them.
If people disagree with it.
A mild, very mild.
Remember what we said earlier, take it or leave it. It may not be for you.
So one of the things that I would recommend from that link in the chat, there's like, if you take sales call transcripts, marketing built personas, any other content that you can find that marketing or a product has provided for you, and you upload that into ChatGPT and use that prompt, you're going to get a really dialed in messaging matrix that's going to supply the talking points for your talk tracks. It's pretty sweet. Any other thoughts on this one?
I don't want to drag it on too much, but I think the messaging as well as like what you're talking about, the personas is where I think targeting.
Yeah.
I think marketing and sales really need to know those problems and the challenges and the reasons why people show interest. And I often find marketing doesn't know that, or what marketing is saying is very different from what sales is saying.
Yeah.
I want leads that come from marketing that are problem aware. That's the ideal state for me. But you cannot get there if you do not sync and have alignment with your marketing team on what that messaging looks like.
Yep.
Should be the same tune, same hum, so people's expectations aren't mismatched when they do come into the conversation.
I like how you say same tune and same hum, because that's how it's supposed to feel. But oftentimes I feel like it's a very different tune.
It's like a brass band and a rock band trying to go together.
That's right. And again, the conversation, the definition, the actual messaging behind it, we all need to agree on that in two departments. And that, again, the marketing and sales alignment issue, probably the hardest to dial in for every company since companies were a thing.
Yeah.
Great resource for this, Challenger Customer. Great book that touches on a lot of these pieces.
You could probably use ChatGPT to summarize it for you.
Maybe.
Hot take number 4. This one's mine. Cold calling doesn't work because you suck at it. So, and this is, I think, kind of hard maybe for a lot of people to hear. The data behind this that's really interesting, 30 Minutes to President's Club, Nick and Armand wrote a book called Cold Calling Sucks. And there's a bunch of data in there. And I think the most compelling one is the average sales rep books about 4.5% of the dials that connect. So when a prospect says hello, about 4.5% of those book into meetings. Mm-hmm. Top performers do 15, 16%. I have seen with some of our clients that the upper echelon 25, 30%. Mm-hmm. And why is that happening? Well, there's also a component we can't ignore around, am I contacting the right person? Is this a good account? Is there a great trigger? But there's also just like, dude, your soft skills on the phone, your delivery is such a big part of it. Sure. So I want to kind of open this up to the floor. This whole cold calling thing, if it's not working for you, this idea of upskilling, how can someone listening to us, what is something that they could do to maybe instantly up level the delivery on a cold call?
Yeah, I have one thing to add on that, and this is just from personal experience as well. There's so many, we talked about this earlier, there's so many like openers that people suggest, so many different like tactics around the first 30 seconds of your cold call. Mm-hmm. I think you just need to find the one that's the most comfortable with you, whether it's permission-based opener.
What do you like?
I don't like permission-based opener.
Yeah, so what
I've always said, hey, I'm calling about that email I sent over the other day, was calling about whatever like the reason that email was. Did you have a chance to take a look at it?
So I want to double click on that. Yeah. So you in your opener, because this is one of the fundamental whys that we talked about before. The reason why the opener is so important is the average cold call only lasts about 80 seconds. So ZoomInfo has data on this. And you're not booking a meeting in 80 seconds, right? So that means that first like 30 to 60 seconds is where that call is won and lost.
Yeah.
And there's a couple fundamental principles that you want to work into your opener. One of them is having something about that person.
Yep.
So can you tell us a little bit more about, you said something about them.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, maybe an example of what that might sound like.
Yeah. So you've talked a lot about like different, or we've talked about this the whole show, like different triggers or signals that you're looking for. And so, Will's going to get to this in one of his hot takes, but when you're segmenting your accounts, you're building it around a specific reason for reaching out. So let's say they're all using a competitor of yours, or they all are, in the same kind of niche as one of your customers. And so that's your reason for reaching out. Hey, we work with so-and-so just like you. I sent you an email. Does the name sound familiar? Did you have a chance to take a look at that email?
So social proof is another element of that too, where it's like, I can name drop competitors or similar types of customers.
Exactly. Yeah. You want them to feel like it's somewhat of a warm call. And the whole goal behind this is like, just go with what makes you feel the most comfortable, what is easiest for you to talk to convey when you're using your opener. Because to your point, it's all about just inflection and tone. It's not as much about exactly what you're saying. So whatever you feel the most comfortable with, stick with it and practice it until it feels like second nature, because that's the most important thing is your tone is the way I think about it.
Cold calling is just one of those things right now. If you're not great at it, it's an activity that's almost not even worth doing because it's so hard to get people to pick up the phone. We're going to give more. Go ahead, Leslie.
I was going to say there's like 3 things soft skills wise. Be human, because I think so many of us feel like we need to put on my professional hat and jacket. And now, hello. Thank you for calling Leslie Douglas's line. You know, and it's like, that's not how I would talk to people. So like being a human, listening back to your calls, it sucks. But like a lot of times you're hearing, you don't understand what you're saying on the phone until you hear yourself back. Third thing I do is talk to someone in your organization who holds the same role as your prospect and ask them the last time they answered a call and what it was that got them to keep talking.
It's a really good one.
Those are great tips. To your point about like talk like a human, I'll give you a tactic I used many, many years, and it works for me still. Find a mirror in your house, stand in front of the mirror, deliver the lines, deliver the opener, have a pretend conversation with your prospect. Are you talking like you talk? Does it sound like you? Is your body language registering that you are being yourself, your authentic self? Keep going, keep getting better, keep sharpening the axe. But if you're forcing it and it doesn't sound like you and it feels forced and awkward, you need to keep going. You need to keep practicing. It has to come off like you own it, start to finish. It's okay to have a script. It is not okay to sound scripted. That's Richard Harris.
I'm going to touch one last thing on that. When I started doing live cold calls last year on camera, the stakes were up, but my performance was actually way better. Yeah. And it's not because I had higher pressure and I felt the need to perform because people were watching me make these calls. It was because I could see myself in the camera. Yeah. Like I had my lens out so I could see myself on the screen and I was so much more aware of what I was doing. So you don't need to film yourself cold calling, but have a mirror on your desk, a nice makeup mirror with some lights so you look nice and pretty, and actually look at your face when you're saying these things. Huge, huge hack for making good cold calls. Yeah.
Okay, let's keep moving. We're going to work in more cold calling tips throughout these next hot takes. And Will, you're next. Segmentation beats personalization. So like in a world where everyone's like, you got to personalize, you got to personalize, you got to personalize, you have a different take on this.
Yeah, I think that advice is what confuses so many sellers.
Yeah.
You have to personalize. Mm-hmm. No, stop it. No, you don't. Like I talk to people bad spray bottle with the water, you know, the dog whisperer. No, like I think that slows people down. And most attempts at personalization I see are pretty darn cringe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. And they're totally irrelevant. And people will spend 20 minutes looking something up to send one email or 20 minutes prepping for a call when the reality is they'd be better just making the call or sending the email. Yep. So to do that without losing the quality of that, you need to segment very, very well when you're building your lists. So what we spoke about earlier, the reasons why people buy from you, those triggers, get very tuned in on those and then build a list of 100 accounts who are all very similar. So the only thing you need to change in your email or your cold call opener is the name. Your reason for the call remains the same. And you need to figure out what those big reasons are, test them, see which ones really resonate, because then you can still be relevant, but you don't need to spend 20 minutes researching. That will then enable you to upload a list to Aurum and make $200 with the exact same opener, which is by the 200th time you've done it, it's going to sound amazing. All right, so you're not changing every single time. Or you can do a video. You can, instead of going and like spending 10 minutes recording a video, you can record a 30-second video because you say everything the same except for the name of who you're addressing it to. Yeah. So segmentation will allow you to be way more efficient and actually remain more relevant. And then personalization becomes this thing that you can sometimes do if you're really, really trying to break into account. But most of the time, it's just cringe, waste of time stuff.
I'm reminded of an old phrase that everybody's probably familiar with. Love is like a fart. If you have to force it, it's probably shit. Personalization is the same.
Never heard that one. Yeah. So we got to keep moving, team. So the segmentation piece, I think that's super important. Is like you need to do a layer deeper than by persona, right? You can go like niche or sub industry or by trigger.
I'll give you an example I did recently, actually. So a lot of companies in SaaS, they might like case studies and social proof of someone in a similar space. A lot of brick and mortar businesses, like construction companies, dentist office, vets, they prefer like, oh, you've worked with someone near me geographically. So you could build a list of 200 accounts who are near one of your big existing customers. And then your opener could sound like this. Hey, I'm in the middle of some research. It's Will. Do you have a second to help me out? And they say, yeah. Okay, cool. Like I said, I'm in the middle of some research. We actually started working with X company recently, one that's local to them.
Yeah.
And if you built a list of 200 accounts that are nearby to them, and they were having these issues, do those resonate with you, or can I share the 2 issues they were running into and you could tell me if it's worth chatting? Yeah. And that is a great opener that requires very little prep other than building a list of people who are near that account you already work with.
This works really great if there's any local nature to what you do or you sell sled, it's great. Let us know in the chat. We're halfway through. What's your favorite tip? What's been most actionable for you? Let us know in the chat. Number 6, Leslie, prospecting via group threads or chats. This one, when you shared it, I was like,
Don't be angry.
interesting. Okay. So tell us more about this
Don't
one.
hate on my group threads. Okay, I will say prospecting via like a group thread. So you're messaging multiple stakeholders or people within their organization. You can also add multiple people from your side of things. We'll get there. I do not do this on email. I just want to preface that. This is a LinkedIn thing for me. You can send voice notes, videos, pure messaging, whatever you feel most comfortable with. But I add in multiple people from my prospect onto the thread. And then I feel like it creates this layer of accountability. I will say the only way you can do this to get a response is by calling out one specific person. So if I put all of you on a thread and I was prospecting into you, I would make sure I'm addressing Jason, but then everyone else is copied in. And it's like, now, Jason, do you feel a little bit of peer pressure to respond to me? Not that that's the goal, is the peer pressure, but there is this extra layer of accountability getting me a higher response rate with a group thread.
So what does this, I'm curious, what does an example of this sound like?
So it's the same talk track that I would use for sales, but I'll put everyone, hey, I thought I would streamline our communications. Jason, I'm Leslie, and I'm helping sponsors to get in front of our audience on the Sell Better Daily Sales Show. Ding, plug. And I'll like list out my reason why that I think they'd be a good fit. Our sellers are in our audience. And then there's a higher response rate. I usually throw some data points in there too. There's a higher response rate from you because your peers are now on this message. So you'll have positive or negative engagement is good, right? Like, hey, yeah, that's not on our roadmap right now. I'll take that and stick it into a cadence later on. But I'm getting response where sometimes that would just fall flat and get a 0 because I think there's more humans involved. We have this nature to just want to respond.
I almost imagine a Slack channel where all those leaders are in and they're like, who's responding here? And somebody's like, I got it. And like, I almost want that to happen because then it's like everybody's on the same page about responding to me. And that's a nice feeling.
Now you're talking about
James, you've done this via email. I've seen one of your email examples where you copied someone, but you addressed one person, but you copied someone else who was in the loop. And you know what mistake a lot of sellers make? They send the same message to 10 people at a company and they're all like, did everyone else get this email as well?
Yeah.
How much more effective would it be to send that email to all of them at once, but just address the person who you think is the most responsible?
I love that you caught that. And another thing I do that's really effective is I will send an email to the last of 3 decision makers potentially and say, hey, I sent this to Roy and Julie as well. That way, the first thing they see is in the preview is that I sent this to 2 people that they work directly with. That's a winner a lot of times because they're like, I don't know that Julie needs to be involved in this, but me and Roy are your person. And you're like, oh, okay, great. When can we all get on a call? It's such an easy.
You're multi-threading from stage 0 as well.
Yeah.
That's a dream for an account executive.
Okay, we got to keep moving, team. We got 4 more left and we have 10 minutes. James,
rapid
hot
fire.
take, outbound with no ask.
So
Tell us more about this one.
outbound with no ask is actually more effective than any CTA that you've used. And I know that's everybody's in the chat is going to be like, no CTA? No CTA. Here's what you're looking for. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate you sending this. I shared this with my team. This is very helpful. These are better responses. Even though they're one-liners, it's so easy for you to hit that reply and be like, no sweat. I'm a wealth of resources like this for people like you. Maybe we should have a conversation and let me run you through some fun stuff that could help your team. At this point, you've bypassed the icky seller feeling that most sellers fight every day. And you are now in this position of somebody that is a wealth of resource, quote unquote, that can help my team, not sell me something. That's a position that's going to put you in a position of power as a seller. You are now a provider before you even talk about what it's going to cost them. That is a win all day.
I think we should clarify that this is not sending an email with a no ask to your product page. This is like helpful content, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very important that what you send is relevant to the person you're sending it to and what they do. Perhaps even the roles that are underneath that decision maker, very helpful because you want them to trickle it down. The other part of it, and this is kind of doubles as a hot take, everybody says InMail is dead. If you don't ask for anything, you can send as many InMails as you want and you get those same responses. Thanks. Appreciate you sending this. Thanks for the invite. This is awesome. What made you send this to me? All of these are great conversation starters, and you didn't ask for nothing.
So one pro tip on this, have a sequence that you send to your prospects that's pure give. And then anyone that responds or interacts or even just opens the email, drop them into a different sequence where you go like super personalized on those. So you can go more at scale with the value add and then go personalized on it. It's a great one for AEs. Jed. FOMO-based messaging beats problem-based messaging.
Yeah, so
this is an interesting one.
Yeah, so FOMO-based messaging beats problem-based messaging. And the reason why is because we are all taught in our emails we should just be focusing on what is the pain point, what is the problem. That's what everyone's taught. That's what everyone's cold emails do. But the thing is, with busy executives who we're all trying to get in front of, they have their priorities clear. They know what their problems are. They're extremely busy. And so if your solution doesn't line up with that, I mean, you can take your best guess and try to, figure out what their problems might be. But if your solution doesn't align with that, you're not going to get in their priority list. But when you go with the FOMO angle, you're playing into their ego, into their emotion a little bit more, which I have found to get a lot more responses, and it stands out a little bit more. So I can share some examples on that. But the idea is, when I say FOMO, you want to share things that people in their space are doing. Let's say you're emailing a VP of marketing, share interesting things that other VPs of marketing are doing that they might not be thinking of. Obviously, those things that they're doing relate to your product and how you differentiate. I'm happy to share specific
Give an example. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was talking about this in the pre-show, but this is my favorite example to give because it happened to me personally. I was working at a company called Mailshake, which is a sales engagement tool. And there's a guy, Kyle Rasmussen. He's a good friend of mine. He's an incredible cold emailer. He emailed my VP of marketing, and he was selling a chatbot software. And so we didn't have a chatbot on our website. So we said, hey, I'm looking at these two other sales engagement tools. And when I went to fill out their chatbot, it took like 2 or 3 hours for them to get back to me. When I looked at your website, I didn't actually see a chatbot. Have you considered this? This could be a really good opportunity for you if you're able to, respond faster to take leads from these other two competitors. And she loved that email. Chatbot was something that she had been kind of thinking about for a while, but just never got around to. But because he highlighted the opportunity with her competitors that they weren't responding fast, it made her like, oh my gosh, this is an opportunity I have to jump on. And I talk about that email all the time because it's one of the best ones that I've seen.
And it's a way to talk about someone's competitors without like doing the we're working with your competitors, we should talk kind of thing.
Exactly.
It's more like it's very similar to your take actually, or it can be a very value-based drop in that message.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the theme behind it is you're still giving them something of value. Like you're highlighting something to them that they might not have known. And so, yeah, it's a huge differentiator.
Quick Urban Dictionary, FOMO, fear of missing out, keeping up with the Joneses, having the cool lunchbox like all the other kids at the lunch table.
Every executive I've ever interacted with, they want to know what world-class looks like.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they are.
One of the most valuable things you can talk about as a seller.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, this ninth one is mine. The hot take here is you don't need more relevance in your outreach. You need a better offer. So we've gotten to this point to where you guys have probably seen the trajectory of you asked for 30 minutes several years back. And then it was like, oh, that feels like a long time. Let's ask for 20, then 15, then 10. And now I see reps asking for 5 minutes. You can't ask for a shorter amount of time. So the thing that we need to do is really think about, well, how are we framing what we're giving to the buyer for their time? What are we giving them? So I want to give some examples of this. I work with a company that sells e-com to small businesses. One of the things that they do is like they actually go and try to check out something from the shopping cart, and they'll notice if it doesn't have upsells on it, there's no express payment, et cetera. Like that's a give. They're doing like a cart analysis. It takes 60 seconds for them to do it. They're giving them something. The outreach is, I noticed this thing that might be costing you sales, right? Another company I worked with, they mystery shopped 400 companies in a space, and they would reach out and say, James, what I noticed is that ABC competitors, their response time via chat is twice as fast. Why is that important? Well, you can lose sales to people tab hopping for XYZ reason, right? I think another offer, what we are doing literally here in Austin is like later tonight, we're doing an exec sales dinner. So it's like meeting in person, having something to invite your buyers to. And this is a play that every sales org should be doing something like this, especially that sells enterprise. How are we inviting people to interact with their peers and learn from their world-class, best-in-class peers? So I think rethinking the offer what am I giving the person for their time is super, super powerful. Thoughts?
Couldn't agree more. The offer, and I would say the missed offer is what you said. Everyone wants to know what world-class looks like. The best offer you can give is sometimes the insights and things people are doing with or without your tool to be successful at solving a particular problem that is related to what you help with.
Yep.
So if you can just share what other people are doing, you're immediately providing value, because I assure you, as a seller, you speak to more people like your prospects than they speak to people like themselves.
Building
so that's
the
what,
relationship.
Yeah.
exactly.
I think when you think about top performing reps, they're not afraid to introduce the people that work against them, the competitors they work in. It's okay to educate your buyer because it puts you in a powerful position to not be desperate. And that's how sellers often come across when they avoid that conversation. Oh, I don't want to open that can of worms. It's a shame, really, because you build a lot of trust with your buyers when you're able to confidently talk about your competition in a positive way.
100%. Last but not least, Will.
You haven't given me much time, JB.
Most humans are not fit for outbound.
This sounds horrible. Most humans are not fit for outbound yet. Okay, so I'm gonna add that yet to it, because you make me sound horrible when you say it like that.
You're such an
Yeah, don't throw me under the bus like that. I've got 2 minutes left. Give me the chance to defend myself. The thing that I've noticed is that over the past few years, more and more people have been using sequences, scripts, etc., with less input themselves. So they become almost like this cog in the machine. And 10, 20 years ago, the best sellers were these people who everyone was like, they have the gift of the gab. Have you heard that one? Mm-hmm. They just have that X factor. That X factor isn't a gift. It's a skill that you need to practice. And that skill is just talking to strangers. That is the job of salespeople. And you need to practice that. You need to be able to hold a conversation with anyone. So if you want to be able to do that, you got to read books about this stuff. The classic one, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But other places you can practice this is just by doing the calls, talking to
Also,
people.
like at the coffee shop, at the store.
Yeah, at the coffee shop, on the airplane. It sucks because I don't like talking to people all the time and I'm often socially exhausted. But just strike up conversations with strangers and talk to people and show interest in them. And you'll become a better seller, developing those skills and just getting used to being willing to have a conversation with anyone about anything. That is a skill every seller should be trying to develop. So talk to more strangers about your product and also not about your product, about anything.
Hear, hear.
So those are our 10 hot takes. Let us know in the chat. What was your biggest takeaway from today? What did you absolutely love? We would love to see that in the chat. Thanks for hanging out with us, everyone. And we want to give a quick thank you to our sponsors, Leslie, James, who's you took the mic, I saw.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to ZoomInfo, Vidyard, and Orem. We would not have been able to do this without you. And we look forward to doing more stuff with more companies that are the best tech businesses in the game. So reach out to us and we will talk about that. Shout out to everybody for making this possible. And thank you for spending our time with us right here live in Austin, Texas.
Awesome.
And thanks for hosting us, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.